Hello, welcome to this Canal Holiday May 2004 slideshow. Holiday on the Kennet Avon Canal with Richard, Jack, Dave and Rod. Richard and Jack pick me up, load up the car, travel down to Rod's where the Land Rover's waiting for us to load up, to then travel on down south towards Devizes. We're heading to Foxhangers Wharf where we'll be picking up our boat for the week. Here at Foxhangers Wharf we get the boat, the Fox Glacier, a 62-foot, one-year-old narrowboat, 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, kitchen, TV, radio, a beautiful boat. And it's a lovely home for the week. We're quickly shown around it, and then after turning the boat round we're heading east up the Cairns flight towards Devizes, which will be our first proper stop. We do the first 5 locks on the Friday night and then do the main flight on the Saturday, bringing us to Devizes for lunchtime. The weather is sunny with showers, but we're in good spirits and we have a great time. Jack mostly working the boat, with Richard, Rod and myself working the locks. In Devizes we have a look around this market town. Now this is a bank holiday weekend and there's a rally on. So although it was difficult to moor, there's plenty to see when we get there, with all the boats with their bunting on. Rod does all the cooking for the week, mainly cooking a large breakfast, sandwiches for lunch and then a lovely evening meal. But as you can see from the inside, the boat's well equipped, light and airy, and it was very snug at night. After the bank holiday weekend we find it easier to moor and we make our relaxed way further east, heading towards Hungerford. But our next stop will be for water. On the hillsides we pass one of the famous white horses in the distance. And then to that stop, Richard gives the boat a clean, the water's piped on, Rod sorts out his menus, and Jack and myself talk to the operator, an old merchant seaman who's worked on submarines and aircraft carriers. Then it's on past the painted bridge, further towards Pewsey, which will be our next stop. The music you're listening to is called Shifting Sands. Hope you like it. The Royal Oak at Pewsey, where we stop for a drink, do some shopping, and find another pub and stop for a drink, and then back to the boat, ready to move on. We're heading further east, and the next part we go through is the Bruce Tunnel. In fact, we decide now, as it's getting towards Tuesday lunchtime, that it's a good time to turn round. And these pictures you see of the tunnel are as of us returning back through it. This tunnel's 550 metres long, wide enough for 2 boats to pass. With our light on and horn sounded, we make it through safely. So we're heading west now, back towards Devizes and Foxhangers, where we'll then travel further towards Bradford-on-Avon, where we'll find somewhere else to turn round before the final leg back to the wharf. There's lots of wildlife to see, farm animals, scenery. The locks that we go through we may have gone through on our own, but there are occasions when we share with other boats, and that makes the load a little lighter. It's on down the canal for another lunchtime stop. This time it's the Barge Inn, where an episode of Inspector Morse had been filmed, and behind the bar was a set of photographs where the staff had their photographs taken. The weather's just brightened up, and in a moment you'll see a beautiful shot as we look down the valley beyond where the locks are. The canal itself seems to be split into the two halves. Here to the west, the beautiful open valleys, where to the east, where we'd been earlier, the valleys were narrower and there were more locks. It's rather late when we reached the Three Magpies that night, but we enjoyed the drink even more. And soon it's another morning and we're off early again, heading towards Bradford-on-Avon. On the outskirts of Bradford-on-Avon, we stop, find another pub, where we have a lovely sandwich. Jack enjoys rather a good drink. He's making his way gingerly back to the canal boat. He's not really worse for wear, but we did have a good laugh at it. Oh, and ably assisted by Rod as well. Then, after getting back on the boat, it's time to look for another place to turn around so that we can head back east towards Foxhanger's Wharf. But we've one more stop before that, the actual town of Bradford-on-Avon itself. We had planned to stop here, but there's a lock at a very narrow turning point, so it makes sense to stop here for the night and then find the turning point next morning. This means we arrive a little early, so we go for an early walk and manage to get in 2 or 3 pubs before tea. So after looking around the centre, taking a few photos, having a few drinks, we head back to the boat, have our evening meal before once again venturing out. And I think Jack managed another 4, maybe even 5 more pubs that night. Then it was off to find somewhere to turn the boat around. With it being 62 foot, there were 1 or 2 circles where we had to leave. But eventually we found a spot, turned round and made our way back. This particular part of the canal was mainly covered with swing bridges rather than locks, so we had a little bit more time between those. Rod sorts out his kitchen and the meal, helped by Richard, who then is called on deck to help with a rather troublesome swing bridge, one that takes all 3 of us to work. It gets stuck on the stonework, so we really have to push hard. Before long we're all helping, and then we're pulling at the side so that Rod can change the gas cylinder, ready to cook the evening meal. Oh, and then we stop for another drink. It's a man with a 10-foot barge pole! Oh, and there's Richard showing him how to use it. And let's have a look at ourselves having a drink. Cheers, Jack, with his IPA. Cheers, Rod, with his pint of Foster's. Cheers, Richard, also with his Henry's IPA. And cheers to myself, Dave, with a pint of Guinness. And then we found another pub just down the road. before making it back to the boat. And while we waited for our evening meal, we had a visitor peck at the window, disturbing Richard planning the last part of the journey, demanding to be fed before we ourselves settled down to a lovely evening meal. Go away. Here we are, another wonderful spread. This time I think we had a glass of, yes, there we are, a glass of wine with it as well. Then one more visitor, as it drew darker, and before we had a little walk for a last nightcap at the local pub. And it's now Friday morning. We're on the last few miles back to Foxhangers Wharf. Rod starts to pack up. Richard's helping him inside. Jack and I get the boat back, give it a clean on the outside, and then pull in at Foxhangers Wharf, where we unload the boat. Richard sorts out the paperwork. I take a couple of last photos, and then it's into the Land Rover, ready to go off to Avebury. This is a marvellous stone circle, over 6,000 years old. A giant stone circle with two inner stone circles, protected by a ditch and a mound. Now the mound was covered with grass, but Richard tells us that originally the chalk mound had been left as it was so that it would reflect in the moonlight and be easily seen for miles around. This is a National Trust property, and there's lots of information about, and they even have their own pub there. So of course we made another visit. Check out a few more notice boards, and then it's into the Land Rover, past an ancient mound. For now we're on our way to Stonehenge. Now, although it was rather cloudy, I managed to get quite a few good pictures as we walked around. The stones themselves are massive and rather spectacular, but the actual side itself is rather compact. I would think the circle's not more than 70 foot across. However, as we walked round, I took some pictures, and we were surrounded by lots of Americans, Japanese, and a lot of French school children. It looks rather different from each perspective, but as you come round the far side, more of the horizontal stones seem to be still in place, and you get a better view of what it must have looked like thousands of years ago. Back to the car. While Rod's in the gift shop, I take one last photograph of the lads, and then it's off to the Old Mill Hotel near Salisbury, where we're going to stay for the Saturday night. A beautiful old place sitting astride the river, which is in fairly full flood because of the rains. We decided to have a little drink outside. Cheers, Jack. Cheers, Rod. Cheers, Dave. Cheers, Rick. I'll take a few more photos, and then we decide that there's a good time to walk into Salisbury and have a look around. Beautiful country here. You can see the cathedral, and of course this is the landscape that Constable painted, and you can see why he chose it. Have a lovely walk into Salisbury, visit 2 or 3 more pubs before we make our way back to the hotel for our evening meal. Rod has chimed to check in with the family, see everything's okay, and then we go for a lovely meal with 2 bottles of wine. And before you know it, it's morning and we're having another meal, a full English breakfast, before it's time to pack up the Land Rover head back up north before we transfer our stuff into Richard's car and travel further north. But not before Richard has us at one last stop, the old Mustard Pot, Jack's 30th pub of the holidays. Quick sandwich in the car park, a look at one of the locals, and then back to my house. Richard and Jack drop me off and head off home themselves at the end of the holiday